The 14th of July, 2025. Good day, everybody. This is your Santa Clarita real estate update. At least now I'm looking at the right camera. I must have 50. All right, so we're going to talk about Castaic, Kenyan Country, Newhall, Saugus, Stevenson Ranch, and Valencia. And the transcriber is probably still going to misspell something, so prepare for that. All right, so we're looking at inventory. The biggest news lately, we've had a bigger increase of inventory than we've seen in quite a few months. In fact, over the past week, we've had an additional 65 listings enter the market for sale. We're sitting at 804 total. Now, some of that includes coming soon listings. In fact, let me give you that number real quick. Coming soon is basically a type of status that an agent can select. Usually it's good for a real estate seller to be able to put their property as coming soon prior to it entering the official real estate market. But it just depends on the strategy and what they're trying to do with getting the listing, of course, sold and how they're going to be strategically marketing that listing. But coming soon, you have a 21-day window, and it can, of course, be less than that, but not more. That's something that sellers might want to consider before getting into it. Now, recently, I started a system because I had so many inquiries. I figured I'd just stick a calendar in one place where you could book a real estate crash course or a real estate briefing, whether you're buying or selling or investing, at zoomescv.com. zoomescv.com. You'll be able to go there. You'll see an intro video. I'll tell you, explain that part of the process, what I'm going to be talking about. But primarily, it's up to you what you want to talk about. If you're just getting into this, you want a general overview of the market, what you should be considering, what questions to ask the lenders out there that you're going to be interviewing before you actually sign on the line, which is dotted. And then, of course, if you're not using my services, whoever it happens to be, those types of questions, you can follow up with them. And this also works not just for Santa Clarita, but even where I don't work as a realtor in other states and so on. I have quite an exhaustive list of real estate agents that ascribe to that same code and that same moral view that I do when it comes to always putting the client first. You can go there, get explanations as to how the market's working and what you need to watch out for. And it's very timely. It's going to be dependent on the day of the week on how that presentation goes, because things in real estate are very dynamic. They do change from moment to moment. That includes interest rates. Newest news out there, I guess the rumor mill has it that the Fed chair might actually have had enough and going to take an extended vacation, might leave that post if that happens, and the president gets somebody in there who loves him. We'll probably see a pretty substantial Fed rate reduction. That's going to impact mostly credit card debt and the money that it costs banks to trade back and forth and so on. Now, having said that, that usually does impact the mortgage rate as well, because it has an impact on the overall economy. We will see those numbers come down. How much? If the Fed is talking about 3 points, I don't know if we're going to see all of that in the mortgage rate, but even a point would be quite a bit of relief. You watch a lot of the local lenders that have their shows, the Minas of the world, and he's talking about if that happens, the market's going to kick off, and that's absolutely right. What will end up happening is we're going to see probably a repeat of 2021, 2022, and if you're not familiar, we had properties selling hand over fist, moment by moment. Whenever a property would be listed for sale, it immediately was in escrow within hours, just depending on those offers in and how fast the seller's agent can move. In addition, buyers were very much willing to give up all of their rights when it came to purchasing property. They waived inspection timeframes. If they could, they waived appraisal. If they could, they gave up and completely removed all of their contingencies right out of the gate just to get their offer accepted. That's not a happy place to be as a real estate buyer, especially if you discover something super wrong with the property. Now, most of them you can kind of go through and look, but there are some hidden factors that only a home inspector would be able to bring out. Be careful if you do get into that kind of market. But if you purchase now, you'll be in short order able to refinance if in fact those rates do come down as everybody's opining. And when that happens, then you can do a refinance, and it probably will cost you almost nothing. It's just going to depend on how your loan happens to be structured. Now, the longer you have a property, the longer that you've been paying, whenever you do a refinance, primarily you're starting that, that 30 years over, depending on what kind of loan you're going to get. But we'll just talk about the garden variety, run-of-the-mill typical mortgage on a house that's 30 years, it starts over. So you got to do those numbers. If you're at, let's say, 6.5% on a 30-year mortgage, but you've been paying for 5 or 6 years, it's important for you to look at what that new interest rate's going to be and then look at the cost and then also factor in how long it's going to take you to recover from the cost of that refinance at that new interest rate. It's just smart money. You have to look out for yourself. And maybe in 3 years, you're going to be retiring from whatever job you happen to have, and you're thinking to yourself, there is no way I'm going to stay out here in California. Or maybe it's going to turn into a utopia by then and it'll be fantastic. But either way, those are decisions that you have to make. So if it is going to be for sure, you're going to exit out of the state, and maybe not because you think California is crappy. Maybe it's because you have kids that have already left and there's nothing else left for you here. So you're going to kind of time out retirement, get that done, and you're going to jet, exit stage left. Then that's cool. Then maybe a refinance wouldn't be a good idea because you're not going to be able to recoup those costs for maybe another 3 or 4 years after your exit strategy is going to take place. Now, of course, everything changes, right? Everything's a gamble. Should we be doing this? Should we be doing that? What's going to happen with AI? Is it going to finish us? I mean, there's a lot going on out there. Plus, the more I watch on what people think about the industry, the market itself, I think it's just better just to hunker down and try to enjoy this process. As far as real estate goes, that home ownership is really a powerful thing in a person's life. Being able to get settled, being able to do the changes you want, being able to start building equity as long as the market continues on the path, that's what ends up happening. But overall, if you look at the larger snapshot of real estate has been a very good investment. Some people ask how soon are they going to be able to make a profit on the sales of their home. I believe that that's going to very much depend on what the market happens to be. But right now, it doesn't look like, at least in the coming months from where we are sitting today, that there's going to be massive gains in that real estate world. But don't forget, you have a mortgage interest deduction that you could take advantage of as long as you fit within those parameters. And a lot of people do. I think almost everybody. Talk to your accountant, your CPA. If you don't have one, I have a great one. Andrew, just fantastic individual. And he will help through any of those processes. But again, that's in my preferred client list. So whenever you're ready, you can reach out to me. And if we talk during our Zoom Me SCV meeting at zoommescv.com, when you book that appointment, we'll talk about that, the things to look for and the advantages of owning real estate far further than I'm just mentioning here in my daily update. Now, two things that I put together. One happened, let's hit on one thing. I'll hit on both. One of them is the closing process. People always want to know when they're going to get their keys. And then they talk about, well, if it's going to close on this day, when do I get it? What ends up happening is in California, at least in Los Angeles County, it's usually a 2-day process. The first day the money moves, so that's funding. And then the second day, that's when the recording takes place and the property is put in the new owner's name. Usually on that day at 5 p.m. at the latest is typically when they get the confirmation of recording. And that's barring any kind of a contractual change that you would have agreed to in the beginning of that process. So maybe at the beginning, you said, you know what? Because I'm competing with other people, I'm going to try to help the seller out. The seller wants an additional couple days after escrow closes to move out. I'm going to do that. There's specific contracts. You're not just allowing it with a handshake. There's specific contracts that have legal tines in there to be able to make sure everybody acts accordingly. It's a seller in possession document, but that's part of that process. So let's say you gave them a couple days, then it would fund, then it would record and confirm and record. And then at 2 days after that at 5 p.m., you would take possession of whatever that that agreement was between you and the seller. But in most cases, that's how that happens to work. Then the other things, utilities, a lot of times people are paying these just god-awful reconnection fees, which is ridiculous. One seller moves out and there was no coordination between their agent and the buyer's agent, which there should be. And maybe in some cases, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but this might not apply. But if you're going to be moving into a place as a real estate buyer, the seller is going to be notifying those utility companies that things are going to be shut off. And per the contract, they're going to continue until the buyer's time of possession. What I would do is I would just try to coordinate with your agent, have them reach out to the seller's agent, and they can CC you on the email, or BCC at least, just so you know what's going on. And then say, hey, listen, if the seller gives those notifications to have the utility shut off on the day of closing, then I'll be able to make my phone call, because they have to do it kind of early, maybe within a few days. Then you make your phone call to that same utility company, say, hey, I'm Connor MacIvor. I'm the new buyer at this particular location. What information do you need from me? I'm going to be taking over the utilities on this date. And then you give them the date of closing, or the day of the suspected close. Usually there's no issues in there with that. And now you have it set up so there's no reconnection fee. That applies to gas. That's going to apply to the electric. That's going to apply to water typically. But call each of those service providers, depending on where you're going to be living, those utility providers, I should say, and ask them, say, is there some kind of a reconnection fee? And that's part of your process. Your agent should educate you on that. And zoomscv.com, we cover those types of issues just to make sure that you're well prepared before you jump all the way into the real estate pond and start splashing around. All right, everybody, I do appreciate you watching, and we will see you tomorrow. A little bit of a long one, but tomorrow will be a good show as well. Please let me know if you have any questions. ZoomMeSCV.com. That'll be my calendar. Watch the video. It's so exciting. I can't wait till you see it. I can't wait to get your review. But then we'll set up a time when we can talk here whenever you're ready. I think I have it set for a month out. That's the maximum time out we can book appointments for. But just let me know whether you're just kicking the tires thinking about it, or whether you're serious and you really want to get to work. Either way, it at least will help you get you aligned with the real estate market. It's hard to put videos together that talk about the entire thing. I do pretty good on that. I put a lot of video content out there. The little things, inspections, like why you shouldn't remove your contingencies, what questions to ask lenders. But it really comes down to you, your decision process. What are you thinking about? Maybe you shouldn't be buying real estate at this time, but maybe you should. So those are questions that are going to come as a result of what you tell me. And then all off what you tell me, I'll be able to cue you up with different things, be able to tee you up, give you some ideas, give you some other thoughts to consider. And a lot of people come out of these meetings, which it makes me feel very, very good. I didn't even think of that. That's a really good idea. Yeah, I'll do that, and so on and so forth. I'm Connor with Honor. I've stopped showing off. We'll be well. We'll talk to you in the next one. Take care.